welcome you to the Priscilla R. Tyson Cultural Arts Center for our conversations and coffee on this 21st day of March. Now, as we look at, is this really the first day of spring? I researched it. We're within a vernal equinox that goes from the 19th to the 21st of the month. So why are we leaping? Because it's leap year, right? But enjoying the beauty of the incoming springtime of 2024. I'm Ellen O'Shaughnessy, coordinator of the program. We're delighted to welcome Catherine Katie Crowley, artist in oil colors, bronze sculptor, and mixed media. Katie, born and raised in the Clintonville neighborhood. Anybody else here from Clintonville? And Katie continues to make her home there. Her childhood was filled with ballet, music, and art lessons, and expeditions into the nearby creeks and ravines. Inspired by stories of headstrong girls, Walt Disney movies, and library of children's books, young Katie drew picture after picture of the world that surrounded her, both real and, as she says, fantastical. Around the age of 10, Katie began to study more seriously, through the Columbus College of Art and Design's Saturday Art Education program. Katie attended Miami University in Oxford, where she received her Bachelor of Fine Arts in Graphic Design. Her paintings are described by her peers as being graphic in nature, employing bold shapes, bright colors, sweeping brush strokes, and balanced compositions. Her sculptures focus on storytelling, and she works to push the materials to be more than figural representations. Her background in art history and interest in both world and popular culture informs her work with unique visual symbolism. Most of her fine artworks center around a narrative and incorporate personal memory and symbolic imagery with a focus on the legacy of the individual. Katie's work has been shown throughout Central Ohio at the OSU Urban Arts Space, the McConnell Arts Center in Worthington, the Zanesville Museum of Art, the Miami University Art Museum, as well as here at our beloved Cultural Arts Center. Katie's work has also been exhibited as part of the National Cherry Blossom Festival in Washington, D.C., and as part of a traveling motorcycle exhibit, and as part of an art exchange with the city of Sayama in Japan. She opened her Clintonville art studio to public tours 3 years in a row as part of the Columbus Open Studio and Stage program. And she's received awards and grant funding from the Greater Columbus Arts Council. Wow. Katie, Catherine, we are so delighted to have you with us today. So, take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces as well. I'm Catherine Crowley. I go by Katie. You're welcome to call me by that name as well. I just want to address the photo you see up front here with the paintbrushes in my hair. I'm kind of known, people comment when they see me out working in the field that I like to store my paintbrushes in my hair. It's easy to just pull them out and paint with them there. So when I had the opportunity to have this photo taken, that's the direction I went. So as Ellen said, I was born here in Columbus, Ohio. I was born in the 1900s, in the earlier millennium. Some of you may remember this time, an earlier time. I grew up in Clintonville, and those ravines that she mentioned were really very important to us as kids. We used to run around and play games in the neighborhood at night, Ghost in the Graveyard and tag and that sort of thing, but we loved going into those ravines and digging around, looking for animals, counting leaves, bringing stuff home. I brought a snake home one time. That didn't go over very well. But we were told to collect bugs for school, and I thought a snake is better than bugs, so until he escaped, and they found him in a closet in the 4th grade, and I had to take him back. But he went back to the ravine, so he's nice and safe. As a child, I loved drawing and being creative. My mom was a school teacher, so I was exposed to a lot of artwork through children's books that she had all over the house all the time. My dad's an attorney. I have 2 younger sisters, and we all loved to tell stories. We would gather around the kitchen table every night and tell our stories from the day. And I remember coming home from school, telling my sister my stories. My mom would come in the room, we'd tell her our stories. My dad would come home from work, we'd tell him our stories. He'd tell us stories, she'd tell us stories. Lots of stories all around the kitchen table. So it was a nice childhood, a lot of activity. And I did get into a lot of opportunities for learning. So you see the ballet lessons, music classes. I was a member of Camp Fire, which is similar to the Girl Scouts, if you're not familiar. Field trips at school, travel with my family, and just exploring around. We also mentioned the CCAD relationship. I started taking classes around the age of 8 or 10 during their Saturday morning program. And I really do consider that a formative experience for me because they treat children there just like they treat college-age students. You would work on a work throughout the morning, and then at the end of that session, you would post your work on the wall, and the teachers and the other students would talk about the work and give you advice on how to make it better. So that's called a critique process, which you end up using in college and later in life, and that really helped me to understand how to receive constructive criticism and make my work better from there. And the photo there is of me and my 2 sisters in front of this building right here in 1985. Yeah. So we're going to start with some early work. First, I'd like to point out some of my influences. And this is sort of everything I was being exposed to in the early 1980s. You probably recognize some of the popular culture items. The images on the bottom were kind of my perception of what artists were. And this photo right here is of a Rembrandt painting, and it's also the package design for Dutch Masters cigars. I didn't smoke a lot of cigars when I was 8, but we had a cigar box full of crayons. So every time I opened that box of crayons, I'd look at these people, and I thought, those are what artists look like. So one of these days, I'm going to get a big hat. But that was my perception, and I knew they worked in oil colors. Artists work in other things too, but I knew these guys in particular worked in oil colors, and that's where I wanted to get. So as a young person, a lot of people start out drawing, and that was sort of my obsession. I really, thinking back, used this as a way to understand the world that I was inhabiting. I was also documenting things that were going on in my life, and it was almost as if it was a journal of my experiences. I think I was probably drawing on a daily basis. My dad, the attorney, and these attorneys love to type up documents, would come home with stacks of paper, and back then you only wrote on one side of the page. So we were allowed to draw whatever we wanted on the back side of those papers, so we were just drawing all the time.
And here's your father right there with
That's right, Dad's here in the room with us today. I paid attention to details that I translated into personal symbols, and I frequently tried to capture an entire scene, which got to be a bit overwhelming, which is where the CCAD instruction comes in. They kind of taught me to focus in on some other items. You can make multiple compositions out of one scene, that sort of thing. So the image you see here that I'm sharing, I did at the age of 4.5, and it is a drawing of the wedding of Princess Diana to Prince Charles, now King Charles. It was a really big deal. It was on TV. It was beautiful. It was ornate and decadent, and I loved anything fancy and beautiful like that. But if you take a look at what I'm drawing here, you'll see some of the details I really focused in on. The figure on the left-hand side is one of the guards that wears the big bearskin hat, and he's carrying a drum. You know, he's playing a drum that he's wearing. And you can see the drumsticks there. I have the carriage. The carriage has 4 wheels. And then the coachman, the horse up front, with the horseman driving him with the whip or the riding crop, and the horse has 4 legs. The airplane in the sky, I believe, is because my parents had visited England somewhere around this time period, and I knew they took a plane to get there. So I'm rationalizing all these things that I'm understanding and turn them into drawing. So a few years later, I thought it would be fun because I remembered that this first drawing existed. This second drawing is the wedding of Princess Catherine, Kate Middleton, to Prince William in 2011. So I think I've advanced a little bit at this point. You can see I've worked shading into the composition. Right. So a lot of my art education came through school. I was still attending CCID Saturday classes through high school until schedules got too complicated. And I was taking art classes in high school as well, where I learned new art forms and different techniques. And the storytelling and use of symbolism became more and more important to me. And I'm also taking other academic classes like history, and you're seeing art that's being created historically and how people were telling stories for their time periods there as well. I enrolled in college with the idea of going into graphic design to go into advertising, which I did later do. And for that program, I was taking studio art courses as well as design classes, as well as academic courses. So it was a real nice, well-rounded group of experiences that I could use to inform my artwork. Art history was a big part of that. I took a lot of art history, fine art history, as well as design history. And I got really interested. I took a survey course on Asian art history, the arts of China, Korea, and Japan, and later followed up with a Chinese art history class, Chinese painting specifically, and was interested in Japanese printmaking. And that is also where I learned about bronze sculpture. At the same time, I was taking a sculpture course, and one of the techniques we were learning was bronze sculpture, so I got to actually employ some of the techniques I was learning about people having done historically.
Tell us about this painting.
This is a painting. The idea here, this was an assignment in college of a self-portrait, and we were supposed to use a Renaissance technique, which involves a lot of layering and glazing, where the paint is sort of thin so you can see through it, but those layers allow for a real nice translucence and kind of a bounce back of the light and really beautiful colors. So these are some of the influences I was being exposed to at the time, the majority of which came from assignments. So I would have studio art teachers telling me, look at this artist because he or she does this. A lot of art history classes where you'd have to write a paper about an artist or a particular piece of work. And I'll point out the ones along the bottom. Toward the left are the Asian classes I was taking, Chinese painting and Japanese printmaking. The two in the center bottom were design focused. And those two are from a movement called Art Nouveau, which was popular in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And I really loved the style because it used these whiplash curves and these really ornate decorations. And you can see how that's going to sort of inform some of my work from there. So after I graduated college, I did go into the workforce. I got a job at an advertising agency, and I've since been working in in-house marketing for different companies. But on the side, on my own, I wanted to be painting and making fine art. So I was, again, drawing from experience. I was taking a couple of dance classes through Ballet Met's evening classes. So this is kind of what it feels like to dance flamenco and swing. This piece was a commission that someone gave me for a family in Iowa, and I wanted to characterize the area because of the rolling hills. It's very similar to Ohio, and I wanted to touch on the family nature, so I have the family tree there, and I worked in the 4 seasons. So you see spring, summer, fall, and the snow of winter. And if you take a look at the way I'm kind of designing these curves, you can see that influence from that Art Nouveau period. So from there, I needed to work to develop a body of work. Here I am in my studio, which is my old bedroom at my parents' house. making whatever I want, but I thought it would be good to get into the community and get involved with other people. So I joined a couple of organizations, one of which paints outdoors. We're still active. It's called Central Ohio Plein Air. We paint outdoors every Saturday in warm weather. And we just pick different metro parks and area parks around the city to visit private homes. Sometimes we're invited. So I did generate a lot of work through that. I got into a couple portraiture and figure drawing groups, and then I realized that they actually offer a bronze sculpture class here at the CAC, so I started making bronze sculpture through there. At the same time, I thought if anybody's going to know what I'm doing, I'm going to need to promote it, so I put together a monthly newsletter that I publish called The Avant-Garde, and I can only talk about myself so much, so I bring in other topics of interest. If I've attended an exhibit or if something's going on in another city, I'll write articles or pull information about that. So if you're interested, it's a good read. I started a website for myself, which is a whole thing. Websites are a good amount of work. And then once social media came on the scene, I started getting active on Facebook, Instagram, etc. So these were my artistic influences around that time period, and this is really self-driven, just stuff that I hear about, an article I read, an exhibit that I attend, and I think that's interesting, I want to dig in a little bit more. You can also see some of the sculptural pieces that I'm taking a look at because I'm taking this sculpture course. And then I sort of started breaking my work into different groups. I called this group Narrative Painting. This particular series I put together is about my relationship with my husband. The piece on the left is us dating, our courtship. The one in the center is where we got engaged, which was in San Francisco, which you could probably figure out. And then the one on the right, we were married here in Columbus, but took a honeymoon to Washington, D.C., followed by Bermuda. So you can see, again, I'm working a lot of bold colors and kind of big shapes, as well as symbolism. If you see those roses show up in all three paintings, that's a personal symbol between the two of us. So I kind of continued that same approach, again with the sky as well, and started painting things around Columbus. So on the left, you see the Park of Roses, and in real life, you see it here as well. The one in the center was actually for a competition, and that is about the Columbus Arts Festival. And you see the building we're standing in here again, there today. And then
right there.
That's right.
Ah.
And then the three on the right were part of this motorcycle exhibit that was mentioned. The instructor I was working with in my bronze class is a big motorcycle guy, and he was putting together a show of motorcycle art, and he said, make me something. And I thought, okay, fine. So I wanted to use the same narrative approach, these sweeping shapes and, curvilinear forms, but I thought, I'm going to put women on bikes, I'm going to put women on 3 different kinds of bikes, and I'm going to put women on bikes in 3 different environments. So we have kind of a farmland scene with a cruiser bike, we have a forest scene with someone whipping through on a speed bike, and then we have what is called a chopper cruising out there in the Old West. The last piece there, you may have seen, it was attached to the side of A&R Music Bar for about 2 years. They have a program, the GCAC has a program where we put posters on the walls of reproductions of people's artwork, and I was selected for that, with that piece there.
Is any members of your family a motorcycle rider?
Yes, my husband rides a motorcycle, and most of his family does as well. I've ridden on the back a couple times, but it's no joke. I'm a little nervous to ride, but I understand the freedom and the feeling and the wind in the hair and why people like that so much. And I will point out, I actually felt kind of bad because 2 of my figures are not wearing helmets, and I feel that I should be reinforcing that you should be wearing helmets. But I wanted to get their hair in the wind, so it's tough.
What will you do about that? Will you edit your piece?
I'm not planning to revise it, no. We'll just call it artist license there, yeah. Oh, that's true. We could Velcro something on. That's an idea. That would make it mixed media. I like that. So the plein air group that I described, all of this work, for the most part, was made with that group. And a lot of what I was doing there initially was to work on speed, because with plein air painting, which means just painting outdoors, you're doing it in the moment. And you have kind of a limited amount of time because the sun moves. So all of your shadows are going to move. So within a 3 to 4 hour period, you would like to complete that painting. The one in the center, which is of the Josephinum, is the painting that traveled to Japan as part of that art exchange. It has been to Japan. I have not been to Japan. And again, you can see I'm picking kind of iconic sites around the city. I do like to pick out things that are recognizable or have some sort of meaning to me.
That impressionistic feel is especially beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Next, I've gotten into some portraiture, and I'm going to call them portrait studies because these are groups of people where we would arrange for a model to sit for us, but they'd only sit for about 2 hours. And portrait painting is different than plein air painting in that you want more time with a model, not less. So I kind of approach these as a study sort of approach, see how quickly I can get through something within 2 hours and what all I can capture. And one of the techniques I developed starting in college and since then, people are for the most part, brown. You know, we're all sort of beige colors, brown colors. What else can you see there? If I can sit there and just look at someone's face, look at how the light is hitting that person, can I find green? Can I find blue? Can I find purple? And then you have to balance that with shadows and curvilinear forms and how musculature works and that sort of thing. But that's sort of how I approach my portrait painting.
Who would you say influenced your color palette on these? If you can mention a couple of artists, Derain or anybody in the Fauvist movement, as far as...
People have used the word Fauvist with me before. There was an artist named Delaney, and I believe the Columbus Museum of Art has one of his pieces, and he used sort of radiating circle shapes as well. And I liked that they're not pastel colors, they're brighter than that, but they kind of fit sort of a pastel palette, if that makes sense. So I would say that would be the influence there.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, sure. Saw another hand. You, sir, in the back?
That third was the one I like.
The third one?
Yeah, one blue on it.
This one here?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That model's name was Naomi. I was very happy with that piece. I really liked the way that worked out.
And that one below it.
Also with the blue?
The 230.
Thank you. Yeah. So you can see I'm sort of, it's almost like I'm creating my own paint by numbers and patching colors together, sort of quilting them in there to make a composition. And it's a little bit of a challenge to balance it because the colors you choose either, you know, progress or recede to the eye. So now we'll chat a little bit about bronze sculpture, if that sounds good to everybody. So I started taking this class at the Cultural Arts Center. I have a few pieces that I brought along with me. These are some of my earlier pieces that I worked on. I started with ready-made stories. The piece in the center of the two figures dancing is based on Little Women, where Jo can't dance publicly because she's burned the back of her dress. So there's a little patch in the back that she's looking toward. So I thought, I have an idea already. I'll go ahead and make that. The little ballerinas, to remind me from my days as a dancer, and I made them young, little kids that are still trying to figure out how to position their bodies. The turtle figure is based on a sculpture that's at Miami University. It's a big sundial in the center of one of the quads, and if you rub the turtle's head, it meant good luck and you'd pass your exams. It also worked retroactively, so if you already took the exam and you rubbed the turtle's head, you'd still do okay. The piece on the very left, which I brought here in person, and you're welcome to come up and look at a little bit later, was a gift that I gave to my husband when he graduated from architecture graduate school. He attended one of the earlier distance programs before all this internet stuff had really taken off. It's a bit, just me walk toward it? Sure. It's a bit heavy, so I won't pick it up. But it is of the Old South Meeting House, which is a famous church in Boston that was used throughout history as a place where ideas were being shared, and revolutionary ideas in some instances there. But I thought that made a really nice symbol to say all these people from across the country are coming together to learn in this space, and this whole program is about architecture. So I designed or created the building there, and then along the base, I put symbols of all of the famous architectural sites in the Boston area. So in the front is actually the Mayflower, because Plymouth is nearby. And then as you go around, you'll see different historic and modern type buildings of what was in the area.
Did you start with clay?
I started with wax. I haven't gone the clay route. You can create bronze a couple of different ways. Ultimately, you need to end up with wax. And this is kind of a sample of how that works. This is a flower that is made out of wax, which will melt if you put it in the heat too much. You could also make this out of clay, but then you're gonna have to make a mold of the clay piece so that you can pour wax into it and get to wax. I wanted to make more than one of these, so I did make a mold. And this is just silicone like you buy at the hardware store. And we mix it with ivory soap to keep it from sticking to everything and just apply it to the wax. And it's a piece mold, so it comes apart. It's not the best piece mold I've ever made either, so it's a little tricky to get the figure out of it once it's done. And then you pour multiple pieces of wax into that mold, so then you have multiples of what you want to cast. You then take a mixture of plaster, sand, and water, and you immerse that wax figure into that with what we call a gate, so it has a place where you can pour bronze into it and air to escape. You heat that mold up, and the wax evaporates out. So it's called the lost wax method, and this was originating in Korea 3,000 or 5,000 years ago. So after that, your mold is dry and hollow. You melt down bronze. I don't do this. I let the foundry people do this downstairs. They pour it into the mold, and in about 20 minutes, it's cool enough that you can just take a hammer and break off that outer mold. You then have to go in with some power tools to clean it up a little bit, which again really impresses me that people thousands of years ago are working on this process and they don't have power tools. But then this is the end result. And I can pass this one around. I have a little bit of bubble wrap there because there might be a hard edge, but.
I'm interested in that color. Is that applied after you've
You're asking about the color on the dancing figures there? Yeah, that's called a patina. There's a variety of different ways you can finish the bronze once you're done with it. There's a polishing approach, sandblasting and that sort of thing, and you can just leave it. You can rub it until it's like a mirror finish, or you can apply paint or a patina. And this, in this case, is a patina, or is it a stain? So with a patina, it actually chemically changes the surface of the metal. With paint or a stain, it just kind of is applied on top. It might be a stain now that I think about it. I'll have to go back and check the bottle. Thank you.
It's gorgeous. And Katie,
Yes.
just a general question. You as a storyteller from way back and creative, how much fun is it to visit this kind of venue when you can expand your skills three-dimensionally? I mean,
Meaning the Cultural Arts Center?
yeah.
I like it here. There's been days where I would come to class and not even do that much work. I'd walk around and talk to other people. I'd come up into the galleries and look at the exhibits. And that's all information gathering for me, too. I do a lot of research and just exposing myself to stuff. And then you end up walking away with ideas. And if you're watching other artists and how they're working and what they're working on, or if they have questions, or what would be the easiest way for me to do this, it's really good to get those conversations going and witness what other people are doing. I think that really helps your artistic practice.
Let's have an applause for the community of the Cultural Arts
Yes,
Center.
thank you,
Woohoo!
community of the Cultural Arts Center. Here's a few more pieces that I did, again, through the same class. These are a little larger. The one on the right is of Icarus, and I wanted to do a riff on the lost wax method of bronze, so his wings are actually made of wax. That was a little harder to pull off than I thought it would be, but I did it. And I keep this in my studio. It's kind of next to a space heater, so if I ever want to use the space heater, I have to make sure I put like a box or something up in front so I don't melt Icarus, because he had that problem before. The piece in the middle is, I had seen something on PBS about something called a Tree of Life, which is a tradition in Mexico where they're making sculptural figures of Adam and Eve with this tree behind them. So my husband and I, because he was taking the class with me, actually did this as a collaborative piece. I did the figures and he did the tree. and it's supposed to be a lamp, so all of those glass pieces you see are supposed to be able to be lit. And then the one on the left, does it look familiar to anybody? Sir, does it look familiar to you at all? Would you mind standing up and turning around?
My
Yeah.
head is protected by
Yes,
copyright.
yes. Turn around, come on, turn around. There we go.
A comment. Make a comment about your.
One of the
daughter's
comments
art.
about that that's distinctive, I think,
Talk into the microphone.
is that the glasses are part of the sculpture, which when Katie did it, she really didn't expect that was going to work out, and it did. So that's actually part of it. And I have photos of my own where she was scrubbing that down to the point that it's polished like that, because when it comes out of the mold, it's pretty rough, and it's got all those
dusty.
points on it that they had to use for venting.
And you helped break it out of the mold, I remember. I brought him here that night and took the hammer.
And I weigh about 30 pounds.
Yeah.
My head's 15, and my shoulders are a separate piece, and that's another 15. So that's on the credenza at my office.
What's it been like for you as a father of an artist? What would stand out in
I
your
don't know
memory?
if we have enough time.
Oh, yeah.
She would draw probably by the time she learned to talk. And the one item that she showed you that had the drawing of the wedding
It's
of
a
Prince
sketchbook.
Charles and Princess Diana, the top of it, that's the Roosevelt Hotel. When she was 5 years old, I took her to New York. I still have other things. We came back to the hotel. So she's sitting there drawing things
On the hotel paper. That's why
on
it
the
says
hotel
Roosevelt Hotel.
paper. And one of them I remember in particular, she was sort of doing a skyline of New York City, which at the time included the World Trade Center. And I asked her, why is the Statue of Liberty backwards or reversed, whatever? She says, well, we're seeing it from the back because of where we are on Manhattan. The kid was 5 years old. So her observational skills have always been, rather impressive. And then she incorporates that into stuff that she does. She did not make me sit for hours to do that. She took photographs
from
of
photographs
me,
there,
sort of
yes.
360'd
Yeah.
me and that. Otherwise, I'd be a lot older than I am now.
There's a lot of different ways to get to your
Thank you
end
for
result. so
sharing
yeah,
that, Dad. That was wonderful.
I'll be passing around a couple of sketchbooks and things as well. Oh, mhm.
Commercial, too. We have the largest combined law firm and art and design studio in the country.
We think.
Unless you can find one with 2 artists or 2 lawyers, in which case we'd be the second largest. And during COVID, Katie and her husband were told they had to work from home, and since she didn't want to work off the kitchen table, or dining room table, and she had her art and design studio at my office, we got to see each other 5 days a week on a regular basis.
That was very nice,
Where
actually.
everybody
That did
else was
make-
isolated.
that did make the
So
COVID experience
we
better.
weren't.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Great story. Thank you.
Katie, on the Icarus piece,
Yes.
how did you come up with an idea that you use for the sun? Is that top flowering thing the sun?
Yes.
Okay.
I was trying to go for a sundial concept. And I think when I initially had this idea, because I liked the idea of you're feeling really good about stuff, and then everything goes wrong. I've had that feeling before, so I kind of wanted to create this Icarus piece. I was actually going to include the other figure, Daedalus, that was going to be smaller to kind of give perspective, but then I decided not to. So when I had the initial idea, I looked up Icarus online to see if anyone else had made a sculpture similar, and it turns out a lot of people have. There were a ton of sculptures to reference. So I might have picked up some ideas from what I saw other people doing, but the sundial concept is what I was going for with the sun there. Yeah. The sketchbook I'm passing around here with the black cover is my sculpture kind of notebook. So as I was making the sculptures, I would print out photos of any references that I was using, and then I would write notes because this is painting is one thing, sculpture's a lot of logistics. So I wanted to keep track of what I was doing, how much money I was spending, how much something weighed, how difficult it was to achieve something. Plus, you put it in the mold, you don't know if it's going to work. So if it comes back and it's failed, you can say, okay, where did I make a mistake? What can I do to improve it? That sort of thing.
What's the actual size on that, please?
Icarus, 18 inches tall, I think. Yeah. All right. Experimentation and new directions. So again, I just like art. I like all forms of art. I love artists, craftspeople. People are self-taught, just seeing what people make, what their influences are, where things are coming from. So I started experimenting with just different processes and things. Photography's gotten to be kind of a big deal with these fancy phones we all have now. So I got involved with Instagram and Photoshop Express and anything in the phone itself that you can edit. I'll pass a few books around of some photography series that I put together. I'm gonna need this. Collage and coloring books. I got interested in collage and I was working on a piece that was gonna be beautiful. And I was gonna knock it out really quickly. And then I realized how difficult collage actually is, and I thought, you know, I should probably study doing this a little bit more, so I started putting some collage pieces together. Constructed sculptures, not something that you would cast or pour, but something you'd make out of other things. And then mixed media, where you start taking one thing and mixing it with something else. And then I've gotten into a little bit more portraiture, mainly because I've been asked to. I've had a couple of commissions. And then I started in on something I call dimensional paintings, which I'll show you here in a minute. So these are my artistic influences kind of now. And it's a lot of folks from a lot of different directions. And that newsletter I talk about, I want to put it out monthly, and I need to have content, so I'll go out looking for content. And I've come across more interesting artists and people just so that I can write an article. And then you can dig into something. I'm basically doing my own research project so I can put a little newsletter together. But I've really used it as a learning tool as well as, you know, a self-promotional sort of thing.
So the newsletter that you're talking about, do you put that here at the Cultural Arts Center?
It's just online through my website, and I send out an email to people that have signed up to receive those emails, and you're welcome to do so. I've got cards up here at the front. Kind of on a monthly basis. So you'll get an email that just says, hey, the newest issue is ready to read, and then a little synopsis of what it's going to be about. But it's
One of the ways you've brought such a beautiful community together.
yes, that's true. I advertised for this program through that newsletter and a
thank
couple of
you.
other avenues, and this room's pretty full, so that's good to see. Most of these artists are contemporary as well, because after a while I thought, so I know about Rembrandt and Van Gogh and all these folks that have, you know, come from the past. What are people doing nowadays? You don't hear about artists like you hear about musicians quite as much, or actors and that sort of thing. So I had to sort of seek people out. So I'm passing around a few books of photography. The images on the left that was my first foray into Instagram. I heard about this Instagram thing with all the filters. My husband had a business trip to Los Angeles, so I tagged along with him for the weekend and went around and just tried out Instagram while I was wandering the city. The next two pieces here, second from the left, the top one, and that's a book that's being passed around. You ever notice those little metal thingies on the lamp posts, the light poles around the city? When we were kids, we thought that was a spy code, and only we could read it, and we'd run around the neighborhood. It's really just a grid telling, I guess, the light pole people where the light poles are, but that's no fun. So it was a spy game. So I thought it'd be neat to just go around and take photographs of those, because they're damaged or bent or not inconsistent, and it'd just be an interesting study of putting a composition together.
Conspiracy theory.
Yes. A good way to start conspiracy theories, too. The bottom image is just of electrical wiring, all the colors and things that go into a garbled up mess of electrical wires. So I put a little series together of that. That's a book that's being passed around. The two images, second from the right, are my mother-in-law's Snow Village house collection that she has out at Christmas time. She takes great care setting out 30 or 40 of these houses and accessories and the lighting all around them. And in the evening, it's really quite beautiful how they're lit up and the colored lights from other Christmas decorations are kind of affecting all the pieces. So I walked around the house one Christmas and took pictures of those. And then the pieces on the left, there's a hot rod show that takes place the weekend after the 4th of July at the fairgrounds every year. And they bring in those candy-colored cars with all those beautiful features. And I just really enjoyed kind of zooming in on the details. And I approach photography from a kind of a thoughtful process. I like to move through it slowly. I did attempt some action photography recently. There's a lot to photography that's very, it varies from one thing to the next. There's a lot of different challenges you can put yourself in front of. So it's just fun to experiment with the medium. The collage and coloring books I mentioned, the pieces across the top are collage works that I have been messing around with. We throw away so much stuff that advertisers and marketing people worked really hard to come up with these images and ideas. What if I cut them out and put them all together? What if I take Mr. Clean and the lady from the hair dye box and put them together? That's what they look like. So just a fun way to play with composition, play with color, kind of pick out a theme. It's a dangerous medium to get into because it means you're just collecting lots of bits of trash and you're keeping it. And you probably shouldn't, but I've sequestered it into one bag so it doesn't take over my whole studio. The coloring books along the bottom, there is one artist that I have really become enamored with. His name is Nick Cave. He's based in Chicago. And he has figured it out. He has merged sculptural costume with dance and movement and music, and the costumes themselves make sound. He calls them sound suits. He's gone in a number of different directions, and his work is focused on social justice. But one of the exhibits I attended, and I traveled to Chicago specifically to go to 2 of his exhibits that were coinciding over the course of just 2 weekends, but we made it. I picked up a coloring book, an activity book that he had in the gift shop. And at first I thought, it's for kids, but then I paged through it. I'm like, what the heck, I'll get it. It's not expensive. And then I looked at it and I thought, you know what? I should do the activities. I should put myself in his position, in his shoes, and see how he sees the world. And he uses a lot of glitter and stickers, and he goes to flea markets and collects objects and things. And I've heard some interviews with him, and what he's saying really resonates with me. So I went to Michael's and I bought a bunch of glitter paint and sequins and faux fur and that sort of thing, and I started working my way through this book. I even got those helicopters from the maple trees and put that all over the one here on the left. So it's a little, because I think to myself, why am I spending my time doing this? But it's a good exercise to go through to understand new materials and how they work and understand the perspective of another artist. Mixed media. So this is where I started just kind of merging things together. I've always been interested in anatomy and physiology. I took some classes in high school and college, mainly for figure drawing purposes, because if you can understand, the bone structure and the muscle structure of a person, you could probably make a pretty good drawing. But they teach you a little more than just that. They teach you about systems of the body and how they work. And I thought that the heart is sort of an interesting circulatory system, is an interesting system. And it's similar to plumbing in its simplest form. What if I took plumbing materials and kind of merged it with drawing and kind of outlined what direction things go as they pass through the body using those plumbing materials? So that's the sculpture there on the left. And then on the right is a mixed media piece I did for my mom when she retired as a school teacher. She taught the younger grades, second grade for the longest period of time. So in the sky, I actually kind of wrote out ABC, and in the green field behind her, I put all the individual numbers, 1 through 0, 1 through 9, 0 through 9. And then I asked my sisters and our spouses and boyfriends to work on little origami pieces to make the flowers in the foreground. So it's a flat painting with this little wooden panel in front with all of these origami pieces. And the title of it is Friends Are Like Flowers in the Garden of Life, because that's a song we used to sing in grade school. And that's her watering the garden, tending to the children. And she started out as a kindergarten teacher. So I'm sorry, the title of it is The Kindergarten Teacher, Friends Are Like Flowers in the Garden of Life. So here's the portraiture that I mentioned. I was invited by someone to create a portrait of her parents. This agreement was a bit tricky because it was supposed to be a surprise, which means I never met these people. She gave me snapshots of them. So I didn't get to sit down with them. I didn't even get to take my own photos. They were just snapshots that I was working from. We talked about what she wanted to include, and I chose some symbolism to place in the image. So here on the left, they had 7 children, so the flowers in the vase represent those 7 children. They're OSU fans, go Bucks, so she wanted scarlet and gray, so I worked that into the flowers. And then this is the couple in their home, and they met working at the phone company all those years ago, so there's a phone on the back wall. So she liked the painting so much that she came back and asked for another one, this time for her sister and brother-in-law. Again, it's a surprise. Well, I'm only going to give you some snapshots of them. They live in West Virginia. She has 3 daughters and 5 grandchildren, so that is represented by the pearls in the necklace. I did some research on the area where they live in West Virginia to come up with the background, and then I worked from the photography she gave me to create the figures. And his hair and beard was too much fun to work on. I do like the way that worked out. It was a bit of a challenge, though. So then she came back to me again, and she said, I want to give my sister a birthday present. This is the same sister, and this time I want it to be of her and me together. She gave me a variety of snapshots, and I just had to figure out what I was going to do. But she was always talking. Her sister comes from West Virginia and visits Columbus because she lives with her mother, and the 3 of them play board games and card games at the kitchen table. And there was a photo she gave me where she's sort of hugging her sister, not in the same way that you see here. I altered the figures a little bit. In front of the table where all these Rummikub tiles were laid out. And I thought those tiles were just too interesting. So I thought, I'm going to use those, because she said she plays that game the most. And they love Starbucks, so she requested that I put the Starbucks cup of coffee there. But I spent a lot of time on the table. I used some layering techniques to get the wood grain just right. The background was a little challenge. It was kind of bland. I didn't know what to do, but I thought, I've made 2 other portraits for this family. What if I incorporate them into the background? So those 2 there. So I thought it, symbolically is very nice that these 2 sisters take such great care of their families, because they're both caregivers.
Is it Mahjong you're playing?
Rummikub, which I think it's like a combination of rummy and mahjong. I've never played it myself, but might have to check into that. And then the dimensional paintings. So this is where I kind of had a turning point for myself. My sister got married, and I needed to get her a gift, and I think somebody was already getting her the KitchenAid stand mixer. So I thought, what about a painting? What about a set of paintings? What if I do the concept, something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue? The end of that phrase is, and a 6pence in her shoe. So I made 4, these are 8x8s, I think, 4 of these square paintings, and they have deep set canvases. So I made paintings on the side of each of them. So I think in total, 16 paintings or 20 paintings total. So something old is where they were living together when they were here in Columbus, and all of the scenes around the edges are something meaningful to them in Columbus, Ohio. So you can see in the image that Ohio Stadium is here on the side. They both attended OSU. They moved to Washington, D.C., so I incorporated images from Washington, D.C. in the second one. They honeymooned in Hawaii. Yes, I gave them to this late after the wedding was over, but they honeymooned in Hawaii, so that's a painting of Diamond Head, and then different scenes that they had vacationed to, because that's something temporary, something borrowed. You don't live there, you're just visiting. And then something blue, they got engaged in New York City at the top of the Empire State Building. I kind of surprised myself. I thought, oh my gosh, I've merged all these concepts together and it's working. Like, I didn't know starting out, could I pull this off? Should I just make a simple, singular image? But no, I was really pleased. And I thought, I'm taking this bronze class. What if I worked bronze into it as well? Well, these canvases are so deep. I drilled a little hole in the back and put a little peg on that shoe, and the shoe fits into the back of that painting, and I got a little 6-pence coin and put it in the shoe. And the shoe is designed to emulate her wedding gown. So the beadwork on the wedding gown is part of the shoe, and that is a white patina stain. I think that has to be a paint stain situation. I don't think you can do a white patina to liven up the shoe. So in this respect, it's like a secret. She can hang it on the wall and no one knows that the shoe is there, and then if you want to show someone, you can. So I felt like I was onto something there. Yeah, go ahead.
Your photo reference, is that something you collected outside of their knowledge, or did you use things that they had taken photos of on the trips?
So things like Diamond Head and the Empire State Building, I searched online. The top left image is German Village. I think I went down there and took that photo. But my sister's husband's family has a cabin in Pennsylvania that they like to visit. And I didn't have any images of that. So I had to strategically ask, hey, can you send me some pictures of this cabin for no particular reason? So if I want to get something done, I will find a way. But yeah, I had to ask for a few things there.
Katie, don't you have an example up here of the same type of technique?
We'll get to that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So this one is called Mother's Roses, and I've started a series of these. There's 3 so far, and this is one of them, and you're welcome to come up and take a look. But the painting's on the front. This is a rose bed called Flamingo Colorscape at the Park of Roses in Clintonville. It is dedicated to my mom because we had an inside joke about flamingos. It is the brightest darn pink. I had to go out and buy special paint. I couldn't even use oil paint. It has to be acrylic paint because this color is just too darn bright pink. But then on the sides of the piece, I've painted different scenes around the park, on the top and bottom as well. And then in the back, because she was a big Beatles fan, I found a music box that plays Let It Be. So for this series, each one is a similar concept, and you see the one back here. We'll have a music box in the back with Beatles music.
Where did you find a little music box?
They've started selling them in gift shops and stuff because it's a little hand crank thing, but they're sort of fun, all sorts of different songs and stuff, yeah.
Batteries will never run out.
Right. You have a question back there?
I like this picture here.
The high school fair.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, that's a series of photos I took of the Ohio State Fair. I love the colors there too, you know? Yeah.
So which other mediums are you finding that is your favorite to work with? I know you got so many.
I still love oil colors the best. That's still my favorite. I've worked in other types of painting. Acrylic dries really quickly. I haven't gotten used to that. I love the luminosity that oil colors give you. I don't use a lot of chemicals to go along with it. I'm usually just using straight paint and some mediums. So any of this turpentine or paint thinner that people are worried about as far as fumes and stuff, I don't use that. So I feel a little better about it in that respect. I had to stop taking the bronze classes because of COVID, and I've been having trouble getting back into them because they've been filling up. But I would like to get back to the bronze classes as well.
Katie,
Yes.
with respect to chemicals, what's a way to clean your oil paint brushes?
Oh, Dad was just asking me this yesterday. I buy this soap that they sell at art supply stores, and you can clean your brushes of oil colors that way without having to use turpentine or anything. Just this soap and water, and it works just fine. So if anyone's looking for ideas for that sort of thing. Another question?
That one that's on the top there. The one with the flowers one? Mm-hmm. That one, I like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I really love color. I love the bold colors, and I started with these using a kind of a cobalt blue to draw in everything, and then paint over top of that. And you can see the blue shining through in some of that. I didn't want to eliminate it entirely.
Where'd you get that little twirly stand?
So my husband's also pretty creative, and he's a little more in the engineering route. He's gotten into 3D printing. So when I said I'd like to be able to show, this is a little challenging to show. I've entered some of these dimensional paintings into shows, and I'm not getting them accepted all that easily, because are they a sculpture because they have to sit in the middle of a room, or can you hang them on a wall? So I usually enter them as sculpture. So I asked him, if somebody wants to turn it without picking it up, how could we do that? And he devised this little stand for me.
What's the name of the red that you use? The name of the red, the bright red that you got for these roses?
Oh, I ended up buying a couple of different pinks, and I used golden paints for that. They're in acrylic paints. Red, I typically use that Quinn red or alizarin crimson. Alizarin is a little darker. It's got a little black to it, and it gets everywhere. I will sometimes, like if I go out in the field and I'm painting some red barn off, I will save that barn until the end of the painting, because once you introduce red into a painting, it just gets everywhere. This is another dimensional painting, and this one I kind of went all out on. My husband and I like to go fishing at Alum Creek, so the painting on the front here at the top is of Alum Creek, one of the scenes I took a photo of with this white tree I thought was really pretty. It's very peaceful and nice out there. And then along the top, I did a sunset image. Along the bottom, I did some fish in the lake. And on the sides, I did us going out in the morning and us coming back in the afternoon, evening. And then in the back, I put all kinds of stuff. And one of the sketchbooks, I think, that I'm passing around, the one with the light blue cover, has a sketch of the ideas going into it. It's a lot of fishing lures, and I had to cut off the little tines so nobody gets stabbed with them. I have a fishing net in there. I have a sample of water from Alum Creek. And then I have photos of people that we've taken out with us. And one of them, if you can see it kind of toward the middle, is me and Dad holding some money, because whoever gets the first fish gets $1. Whoever gets the most fish gets $1, and whoever gets the biggest fish gets $1. So I got $1 that day, and I think you got 2, right, Dad? So just
There's no sale.
and some days there's no sale. That's true.
In your painting, did you sketch first this painting, or did you just paint?
A lot of times, with especially landscape scenes, I will just start in on the canvas, but I draw with the paint. I start out drawing with the paint, so I have kind of an underdrawing to the painting. The pieces on the sides where I'm showing us, coming in or out of a boat or whatever, I would have drawn and probably traced and placed on the canvas.
That's gorgeous.
I think we're wrapping up here. Couple minutes. Let's see. I'll just introduce this one. This one's here. You can come look at it in real life. And in the back is a collection of cherry pits. I have a cherry tree in my backyard, and I've gotten into
Shadow box?
yeah, like a diorama or shadow box. I love that kind of thing. This is the pitter that you use to get all these pits out of there. I did a 4 seasons thing around the sides, so the tree itself in summer, fall, winter, and spring. You see the blossoms, those are coming, only a couple weeks out. And then the cherries later in June. And then a still life, just what you would use, ingredients, that sort of thing to make a pie. So let's see, web and social content. I've talked about it before. I have this newsletter. I have a website. I'm out there on social media. If you want to follow me, I'm available. I also found a website called Fine Art America that if you want to, promote and sell products of your work, prints and mugs and that sort of thing. So I have a presence there. And if you want to visit any of those are the QR codes and handles to get to them. So I think that's all for me.
Katie Crowley.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A pleasure to speak with everyone today. Yes, yes.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, Columbus has been a really great city to grow up in, and with a lot of resources. We have a lot of world-class things, but we're not too big. So I think that's what's great about us here.